In my opinion, no one really crafts stories with more intriguing themes than you. You really do a good job, my friend. And your first one, Come to Jesus, here's a good example, sounds like a wild Valentine story, right?
Well, it is. And,
Yeah.
most people, when they have that kind of come to Jesus moment, it's usually the result of having, some sort of near-death experience. Mine came about after spending about 2.5 hours with my arm stuck in this Coke machine in the basement of my dorm. Um, I was sitting there with my arm stuck on the floor, and there's this parade of folks coming by offering suggestions how I could get my arm out. None of them worked. And, I was there for a long time, and I really needed to pee. And I don't know whether it was my bladder filling or the fact that I had been sitting there that long, but I realized at that point that I just needed to make some changes in my life. Now, you're probably wondering, what the hell am I doing on the floor with my arm stuck in this Coke machine? Uh, well, among the many firsts that I experienced that semester, one of them was going to my first Grateful Dead concert. Uh, I tried magic mushrooms, which ended up with me in a dorm room the next morning with no recollection of how I got there, and a pierced ear. Um, oh yeah, and I lost my virginity that semester. But in addition to that,
By the Coke machine,
not by the Coke machine, and not with the magic mushrooms. Yeah. But we'll get to that. But one of the things I learned from the master was how I could finesse Cokes out of this machine. And it was really fairly easy. You just had to have a relatively thin hand, thin wrist. You'd snake your arm up in, push the bottles up, turn the one at the bottom 90 degrees, pull it down, and it would just pop right out. And, I could get Cokes for myself and Cokes for my friend. The problem this time was that there were too many Cokes in the machine. And when I pushed my hand up, they slipped down and I got pinned. And it became like this Gordian knot. The more I moved, the more I was stuck. So we tried all sorts of things to get my arm out. Rocking the machine gently, rocking the machine a little bit more challengingly. None of this was working, and I was forced at that point to kind of fall on my sword, which was calling up the guy who had the key to the machine to come over and get my arm out. The problem with that was I was going to end up in the dean's office because, technically I was trying to steal a 15-cent Coke out of this Coke machine. But unfortunately, I didn't really see that there was a way out. Now, 2 hours of kneeling in front of the Coke machine is a long time, even with the interruption of all these folks coming by, some coming to get a Coke, some coming down to offer advice, and some just coming down to look at this stupid freshman that's got his arm stuck in the Coke machine. But sitting on the floor there, well, it was a little bit like being in the stocks at the Boston Commons, and it was humiliating and painful. And I really needed to pee. In that 2 hours, my mind was drifting, and it was covering a range of topics, but it kept coming back to my losing my virginity and my girlfriend Eileen, who was the love of my life. Unfortunately, I didn't lose my virginity with Eileen, despite all my best efforts, and I do mean best efforts. She was back in New York. I was in Illinois. Now, it had been this older woman. She was 20. I was 17. It was a back rub that had started as a back rub that had turned into a front rub that had moved downward. And in addition to losing my virginity, I experienced, how shall we say, I guess, other delights. And over the next 5 weeks, I just came to realize several things. I was very, very much in love with Eileen. I was guilty as all hell, and I really, really liked to have sex. And I needed more practice. I would love to have had sex with Eileen, but the distance was a problem. So what to do? But more immediately, I'm kneeling on the floor in front of this Coke machine. And I really needed to pee. So with the guy with the key nowhere to be found, I decided it was time to go with the kind of the nuclear option. That entailed laying the machine over on its side so that I could wiggle my arm out. And if that didn't work, we were going to tip it up on its top. But that would work. For this, we needed a mattress and a ladder. And my buddy Butzo, who had taught me how to get my arm into the machine, was the one that had gone off to get that equipment. He showed up with it right at the same time that the guy with the key showed up. It took him less than a minute to get my hand out, and the following Monday, I had a verbal warning from Dean Gordon. I had to go in and see the dean. Dean said, "Paul, that was a pretty stupid thing to do. Don't do it again." pretty good verbal warning. And I can say I didn't. I actually didn't. I actually swore off Coke altogether, and I became a cream soda guy, and I never violated that Coke machine again. But more importantly, I broke up with Barb, the older woman, and boy, was she pissed at me. Not because she was in love with me or anything, but more because she had wasted 5 weeks of training on, as she said, this wimp who was going to go back to his high school sweetheart who wouldn't even put out for him. Suffice to say, I was replaced rather quickly. Now, this is a true love conquers all story, and I'm glad to say that I stayed faithful to Eileen to the end, which was about a year later when she dumped me. At that point, I had flunked out of college. I was back in Yonkers. I was driving a forklift in a dead-end warehouse job, working too much, not much fun to be with. Confessions can be good for the soul, but they can be not so good for your relationship. It's better not to get yourself in those situations in the first place, much like not getting yourself in a situation where you need the guy with the key to the Coke machine to come and get you out. Plus, it seemed that someone had been sneaking around her back door, and he was more enticing than I was, despite all my new skills. But that didn't last. She and I started seeing each other again on and off, and I'm happy to say at this point, we're both very much in love and happily married. Just happens to be the other people. There's a Stone song that I think it fits this very well. You can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And if you're lucky, like in my case, what you end up with a very, very nice, enduring friendship, and in my case, a very wonderful marriage to another woman.
So you are friends with her.
Oh, absolutely.
So, right?
She's probably
cool.
listening and cringing.
Right. And you flunked out of college because of her, would you say?
I flunked out of college. I would attribute a bit of it to homesickness and being in love.
Yeah.
But I would generally attribute it to being a 17-year-old at college and just not having my act together.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I love it.